air currents. During his training with Gran Torino, Deku realizes he's been using One for All only in the limbs rather than his whole body. This leads him to develop One for All Full Cow, a technique that allows him to increase his overall strength and agility by spreading the 5% of power he can safely use across his entire body. After mastering Full Cow, Deku could react to Gran Torino's speed and even hold his own in his fight against Stain. Then in his training for the Provisional Hero License exam, Deku realizes that using only his arms isn't the best style for him due to the severe damage they've already taken. That's why he develops Shoot Style, a technique that focuses Full Cow's power in his torso and legs instead of his arms, allowing him to put out even more power. By the time of his second fight with Bakugo, Deku finds out how to use One for All at 8% of its power without repercussions thanks to using his legs. Then in his battle against Overhaul, he manages to push the quirk even further and reaches 20% power without taking damage, though he could only sustain this increased output for a short period of time. After fighting against Overhaul, Deku realizes that he lacks an ultimate long-range technique. He starts training with All Might and masters Delaware Smash Air Force, which allows him to shoot blasts of compressed air from his fingers. These air blasts also allow Deku to propel himself in the air when used in conjunction with Float and Fajin. Speaking of the quirks of the previous holders, the first time we saw Deku using another quirk besides One for All was when he unintentionally used Black Whip during the joint training session between classes 1A and 1B. In his subconscious, Deku meets Daigoro, who explains that the quirk factors of the previous holders have merged with the core of One for All and increased in strength proportionally. He also informs Deku that he will awaken 5 other quirks besides One for All and Black Whip in the near future. And sure enough, Deku begins to unlock the quirks of the previous holders one after another in a short time. In his first battle against Shigaraki, he unlocks Float and Danger Sense and becomes much more proficient in using Black Whip naturally. Training with Endeavor and All Might also raised Deku's base limit of One for All to 30%, and he can now momentarily use 45% without breaking his body. It's worth noting that Deku is the first One for All user to have access to the quirks of the previous holders and communicate with all of them. During a conversation with the vestiges of One for All, Deku learns that while the quirk is a great source of power, it also carries a curse. If someone who already has a quirk receives One for All, the extra quirk places an enormous burden on their body which depletes their life force and shortens their lifespan. That's the reason for Hikage's rapid aging. He already had a quirk before receiving One for All, and this made his lifespan shorter. However, Deku and All Might are both immune to this curse because they were born quirkless. This immunity is what allowed All Might to wield the quirk for over 40 years without facing any drawbacks. Not long after that, Deku unlocks yet another quirk, Smokescreen. The 4 additional quirks along with the 45% of One for All make Deku so powerful that he defeats extremely powerful villains like Muscular without breaking a sweat. Later in his fight against Lady Nagin, Deku forces out Fajin, which allows him to develop a technique called Foe 100%. This technique allows him to temporarily use One for All at its full 100% power without damaging his body. In his second battle against Shigaraki, Deku activates the last quirk, Gear Shift. Remember when I said Ken could shoot only small objects using Gear Shift, which All for One likened to a pea shooter? Well, by the time Deku uses it for the first time, Gear Shift has greatly evolved in power to the point it's designated as a last resort thanks to its integration with One for All. When Gear Shift is combined with Fajin through the ultimate move, Overdrive, Deku can access 120% of his power and propel himself at incredible speeds to deliver powerful attacks. However, using Gear Shift in this empowered form for too long comes with a great cost. If Deku exceeds 5 minutes, his body won't receive enough oxygen, which causes intense pain to his body, making him almost completely paralyzed. In fact, after pushing Gear Shift beyond that limit, he had to use Black Whip to manually reinforce and pull the muscles and tendons within his body just to move. Although Deku is the last user of One for All, he actually transfers the quirk to 2 other characters during his lifetime. If you haven't watched the movie Heroes Rising, then you probably missed that Deku actually transfers One for All to Bakugo, however only temporarily. This happens when the two fight against a villain called Nine, who's the main antagonist of the movie. Despite the brief period of possession, Bakugo demonstrates incredible proficiency with the quirk. He could instantly use Full Cow 100% without any prior instruction, and when he used One for All to enhance his given quirk, Explosion, it became so powerful that even simple blasts could create massive craters. After the battle, Bakugo loses One for All, and the quirk remains in Deku's body. All Might theorizes that One for All remained within Deku due to his willingness to protect others even if it meant sacrificing the power for himself. And this brings us to the last wielder of One for All, who believe it or not is none other than Tomura Shigaraki. Towards the end of the series, Deku forcibly transfers all of the quirks from One for All into Shigaraki in an attempt to destroy the leaden core that resides within him. This damages parts of the core while also making the quirks unusable to the villain. Eventually, even the original One for All quirk is transferred and quickly shattered, just as the leaden core is finally destroyed, allowing Deku to reach out to Tenko's spirit from within. This means that Shigaraki was never able to actually use One for All at all, due to the quirk being destroyed almost immediately upon entering his body. This also means that Deku becomes quirkless once again at the end of the series.